Hello, everyone. Welcome to Starfleet Tactical. It's been a while, so I think it's been about 6 weeks since we've done a show. As always, Pat Doyle is here with me, helping out. Um, I hate the way that I didn't mean to make it sound like that. I'm making it sound like you're just here to clean up afterwards or something like that. When in reality, so basically, in case you haven't figured out, I'm kind of the extroverted one, so I'm the one inclined to talk. So Pat just sort of said, "All right, I'll just let him talk." But in any event, we ended up taking 6 weeks off because about 6 weeks ago, Pat and I realized that we really needed to sit down and think really, really hard about whether there was ever any instance in which we could be speaking for our employers. And so we took some meditation classes to ponder the sort of the concept of whether we could be speaking for our employers on this show at all. And in the end, I think we both pretty much conclusively came to the conclusion that we're not speaking for our employers. Is that correct, Pat?
Conclusively, yes.
So that's good to know. That's good to know. No, really, actually what happened was we had a bunch of stuff just sort of happen all at once. Pat's stuff is, in all honesty, Pat's part of this is actually really kind of boring. He just got really, really busy with work, and because he's a naval reservist also, they sent him to Norfolk to do some cool research stuff with NATO. But he just basically
all first world problems in my case.
Yeah, all first world, I guess first world problems in all our cases. But in the case of Pat, it was just like he got sent to some places, and so he couldn't backstop me. And so usually with the two of us, it really works out well that if one of us is unavailable, the other one can just pick up the ball and carry it by themselves. And I was the one who was like the total shit show for a big chunk of that. I had so some of you know, but most of you probably don't, that show I did a couple of episodes before we went on hiatus. I did that show from my brother's house in Des Moines, Iowa. And the reason I was in Des Moines is because my mom had died the day before. And so she had Alzheimer's. It was going to happen sooner or later. As I point out, there are 4 different possible outcomes to Alzheimer's, and they can be described as bad, very, very bad, and very, very, very bad. And we got bad. So I feel really sad that she's gone, but and at least it was nowhere near as bad as it could have been, and she went relatively quick. And so that's why I was in Des Moines for that show. I get back to Dayton, and almost immediately I start having kidney stone issues. Pat, have you ever had a kidney stone?
Yeah, once.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
Well, you actually for about 6 months, yeah.
Yeah. So for the record, my kidney stone was soft and cuddly compared to Pat's experience, right? My kidney stone was nothing compared to Pat's experience, because what I had happen like twice, Pat had happen like on a regular basis for 6 months. But if you've never had a kidney stone, you can go from perfectly fine to debilitating pain and nausea in about 10 minutes. And mine kept flaring up, and I eventually ended up going to the ER, and they gave me some really good drugs. So I now have a favorite narcotic, Dilaudid, 5 stars. Would do it.
Linda told me I would sing, so
you would sing.
Yeah, apparently. So, yeah.
Was this on the narcotic or
oh, absolutely. There's no scenario where Pat sings and is sober. So,
the narcotic really did. They gave me this stuff that they said was 10 times more powerful than morphine, and it I didn't feel anything like that. It's just like the pain went away and I got really sleepy. And so, then they come back in, they say, okay, they'd already done the CAT scan. They said, you got this stone here and you got another stone waiting in the wings. And we figured, this is where it's at. And here's a prescription for some hydrocodone. And here's a prescription for the professional level anti-nausea med. And here's a prescription for this, et cetera. Now we can check you out and you can leave. And I said, am I okay to drive? because you just gave me some good shit. And they said, well, from a motor skills point, you are, which kind of surprised me. But I'm talking to the ER nurse, and if she says I can drive, I can drive. But she said, it does make you sleepy. And I said, yeah, I am kind of sleepy. And she says, well, you can hang out in the waiting room if you want for a while. And I said, how about this nice comfy bed? Can I just hang out here? And I had previously asked them, because I've become a connoisseur of ERs, right? I have spent way more time than I'd like to in emergency rooms. This is what happens when you're a cardiac patient. Luckily, I kind of outed that habit, but I still occasionally end up in ERs. So every time I go to an ER, I always say, how many beds do you have? How full are you right now? Is this a normal like level of stuff going on in the ER right now? And so I knew that they had 40 beds and they had 10 of them full. So I wasn't asking them to, nobody was going to not get to go back in the ER because I was taking up a bed. So they said, all right, well, I've got some people to check in. I'll go check them in, then I'll come back and check you out. So I got 45 minutes of sleep for the first time in 4 days. And that was good. And then I went home and slept some more. I live very close to the ER, so it was a very short drive. And then I got to do just sort of kidney stone things for a while. And then my doctor went in and took care of the kidney stone. And I've been joking to people that I am on this show. I'm going to describe counter kidney stone operations using the ASW kill chain as a model. And guess what? I'm not joking. I am going to describe later in the show counter kidney stone operations using the anti-submarine warfare kill chain as a model. So you've got all that to look for. And we're going to talk about kill chains in general. So I'm finished kidney stone 1. That's foreshadowing. I start getting indications that the second kidney stone has maybe come loose. I start getting a little bit of indications like that. So until we can sort of nail that one down and I can get sort of some medical imaging, I'm not going anywhere. So now we're going to get to the downer part of the show, but I want to get this out of the way. So in the last show, I rewatched it today. I'm all caught up on all my comments. In the last show, I talked a little bit about my friend Arius, who's a fellow member of BU9 with Pat and I. He's a guy I've known for almost 30 years. We've been roommates. We worked at a couple of jobs together. He had just started a job where we were going to get a chance to work together again. I've designed a war game with him. We've talked about doing a novel together. One of my closest friends ever. Right. Basically, love him like a brother. And the plan was that 2 weeks from today, he was going to be on the show because I was going to drive down to Florida where he lives. I had some business in Alabama. So it's I'm just going to take the weekend off, go down and hang out with Arius. We were either going to do the show from there, or we talked about, maybe the right answer is to drive to Alex's place up in Atlanta and do the show from there. And so that we hadn't quite decided exactly how we were doing it, but we were going to do the show together. And then I was going to go back home after the weekend. Well, that conversation took place a week ago Thursday. A week ago Friday, he had a stroke. And he got worse and worse over the course of the weekend. And on Monday, the decision was made to take him off life support, and he died 15 minutes later. So you're not going to get a chance to meet Arius, but, and this is why I bring this up here in this context, is I asked his sister what I can do for her and the family, and she said, talk about him a lot. Don't let him be forgotten. Talk about him a lot. And I always talk about Arius a lot too. I've probably mentioned him, 24. The only person I can think of that I've probably mentioned more in the show than Arius is probably Andy Presby. So from that standpoint, you're not going to have to worry about, Viga's not going to have to worry about me talking about Arius a lot. But but I wanted to sort of start off the show because it may not be apparent to most of the people out there, but Arias was actually a big part of this show. I spent a lot of time talking with Arias about the show, and Arias is, Arias is the guy I bounce science fiction ideas off of and stuff like that. And it just sort of seemed appropriate to start off this show by mentioning him and mentioning what's going on. For the record, I'm doing pretty good. It's surreal. I was supposed to, plan A was I was going to drive to Atlanta and actually do the show from Alex's place tonight. Because the next day I was going to get in my car and drive down to Florida to help Arias's brother and cousin empty out his apartment. But there's a hurricane heading to Florida now. And we rejected the course of action of going to Florida and then riding out the hurricane in place, which is what I had suggested. I'm really glad that they rejected that, because at some time after we decided that was a dumb plan, I realized that my car wouldn't have been in a garage. My car would have been just sitting out in the parking lot, and that probably would have been a bad thing. Now, my car has 265,000 miles on it, so there are worse things that could happen than my car getting dinged up a little bit, but I'd hate to come back out and discover my windshield had been destroyed by a flying tree branch or something. So we decided not to do that. So with that sort of downer, let's move past the downer and go back to, hey, Pat, how's your week been?
Well, I've had a good couple weeks. I ended up I was in Norfolk for a couple weeks, working at NATO, doing some research and stuff like that. And so it was a good time. Actually, I really enjoyed it. Great bunch of people I got to work with over there, and did some historical research and basically sort of putting together presentations that could potentially be taken to museums or various other presentations that NATO does, or events that NATO does. So it was a lot of fun. And so I was the first one there. So I was the one just kind of setting the system up and putting some stuff together. So what happened was there was a woman who had passed away a few years ago. And it turns out she had been a big, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, kind of a big fan of NATO, or a volunteer. She would do volunteer work.
She was a NATO super fan.
Yeah, something like that. But she would write, and so she left a lot of these newspaper clippings and letters and all this kind of stuff to NATO, and they got these boxes of stuff, and they've had people going through it, and they had some diligent person going through and scanning all the stuff about a week or two before I got there, scanned 1,300 items and stuff. But so I'm looking through these articles from the 1950s and 60s and stuff. I found a letter that had been written to her by John F. Kennedy, a letter from the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe and stuff. So she had written all of these people. So anyways, it was kind of interesting to go through the stuff and sort of pick out some stories out of all that information and letters and that sort of thing. So it was fun. I had a really good time with it.
Do I remember correctly? You told me the Sacyr who wrote her was Gavin. Is that
no, it wasn't Gavin. I see we have a Scott Martin Gavin here. But one of the actual article, actually, this is kind of funny. Hang on a second. The Sacyr that wrote her was General Norstad. I believe he was the one that took over after Eisenhower. There might have been one after Eisenhower in between. I haven't. I'm still new to that particular portion, the details of that part of history.
And Norstad had a really weird first name, if I remember correctly.
Loris or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So Pat discovered, when he called me up and talked with me about this, he discovered something that I'm not sure that he knew, which is that Before I became a Navy geek, I was a NATO and a nuclear weapon geek.
What's that?
I said before you discovered something that you didn't previously know, I don't think, which is before I became a Navy geek, I was a NATO and nuclear weapons geek.
Yeah.
And so he was telling me about this, and I went, "That's really cool."
Yeah. So, So we have Scott Martin Gavin here. I don't know if there's any relation, but like one of these articles.
This
is one of the posters that had a little defect on it, so I brought it with me. But there's a Lieutenant James M. Gavin. You probably can't really see it well, but this is him right here, General Gavin, and he wrote this book called War and Peace in the Space Age. So, anyways, so that's some of what I was working on. So it was actually a lot of fun. Sometimes in the military you get good deals, and sometimes in the military you get not so good deals. So you try to enjoy the good deals when you can.
And sometimes you get them both at the same time. Sometimes you get them both at the same time.
Yeah. So anyways, it's been a good couple weeks. I just got home yesterday and just got home from work a couple hours ago, and I get to enjoy tomorrow off, just like probably most people, hopefully, or many people.
Yeah. I mean, in sort of the level of, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Other than my best friend dying on Monday, I've had a pretty good week. Everything considering, I mean, by the time Monday rolled around, it was pretty obvious what was going to happen. It was just a matter of waiting for it. Mm-hmm. But for the rest of the week, I spent some time talking with Vic and his cousin Pablo, and we were getting ready to go down there. We were actually looking forward to seeing each other because, COVID. I haven't seen any of these folks I haven't seen Pablo in probably 2.5 or 3 years, and I haven't seen Vic in at least 1.5 years. So at least I'd get a chance to see them. We were getting ready to go down. We're going to go down at the end of the month instead. And part of it is with all this, because I said I'm going to go ahead and take next week off, and then I realized, I'm going to go to Iowa, so I'm leaving tomorrow morning to go visit my dad, because the first real flare-up of the kidney stone happened literally the night before. It was the Thursday before Memorial Day. And Friday morning, it happened about 3:00 in the afternoon. And Friday morning at 0600, I was going to be in my car driving to Iowa. And then I was going to go up to Minnesota, and I was going to do the show in Iowa from my brother's house on that Saturday, and from Chris Carlson's house the following Saturday, and had it all planned out and had to cancel that trip. So now I'm going to do the trip that I had to cancel before and get a chance to see people. And I'm going to go up to Minneapolis where Pat is, and Pat's going to be in Norfolk.
That seems to happen a lot.
So it'll be Chris Carlson and I on the show next week. And Pat will probably not be there, but if he can be, that's great. But Chris and I are prepared to carry the torch without him. So
it's good. So, Mr. Gavin here, Scott Martin Gavin, are you serious? General James Gavin was a relative of yours? That's impressive. That's fascinating. Just
cool.
Being new to all this stuff. Yeah, cool is the word I'm looking for. Okay. So, excellent.
So, let's see. I'm looking through here real quick. Wright asked the question, how far away are you from the Air Force Museum? Depends on the lights. My car is out front. It might take me as long as 10 minutes if the lights are not in my favor. I mean, I'm close enough. So the Air Force Museum is on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Area B, because Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is two discontinuous chunks. It used to be one great big chunk, but then they built a roadway through it. and now it's 2 discontinuous chunks. And those chunks basically boil down to there's a Wright part and there's a Patterson part. There was a Wright field and a Patterson field. And I'm on the part that I think used to be Wright field. And so Area B has the Air Force Museum, although they sort of built the fence around it in such a way that it's outside the fence, but it's still part of the base. And so when they get on the big voice, the intercom system, to play the national anthem and stuff like that, I can be sitting in the chair I am in now with all my windows closed and listen to the national anthem
every morning, huh?
Yeah, every morning, and I get to hear. Actually, they do it in the afternoon. Yeah.
That's Air Force, right?
Yeah, Air Force. And they do something in the morning, and they do it at 7:30, which I think if I remember correctly, then at Newport they did it at 7, if I remember correctly. But there's so I'm like literally right next to base. I'm right between the base and Wright State University. So the other thing I was going to say to Wright, so Wright actually is, he says he's going to be in Dayton for a day in late August. If I'm not in Hawaii, Wright, we should get together. And I'm pretty sure that you're in the part of Florida that I'm going to. So we should.
Hey, Chris, are you right off of Kaufman Avenue?
Yeah, I'm very close to Kaufman Avenue.
Outstanding.
It's spelled a little bit differently, but I was really
close enough.
Yeah, I was really waiting because Arias's employer is the University of Dayton Research Institute, who they did the support for my organization, which I'm not mentioning because I don't speak for them and I haven't run this by public affairs. But the guy in the cubicle next to me, who used to be in the cubicle next to me, decided to move back to Florida to help, to be closer to his family. And so I had told him about Arias, like, I know this guy, you should hire this guy. And he concluded he was the perfect guy. And then he moved to Florida and hired him to work down in Florida. I mean, he was still going to do some stuff with us because we work with the Florida people all the time. But it's like, I get this call from Arias, like, yeah, I got a job offer. It's in Florida. And I said, what? What the hell is that?
Pensacola is a fun little town.
Yeah.
It was when I lived there.
I think I've been to Florida once. I was changing planes. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to going to Florida. I'm gonna go down a day or two early because I've got some business stuff I need to do along the way. And when I get down there, so I may actually get a chance to hang out just a tiny little bit. And I'm hoping that, we've got the time to sort of like not just be frantic when we get down there. One other quick Arias story. So the joke is that I got Arias, for a long time, the joke was I got him hired twice and fired once. And now hired thrice and fired once. So he worked with me in Intercon Systems Corporation. He worked with me at the Center for Naval Analysis. And then he worked for me in this last job, or worked with me in this last job. He worked with me in all these other places. And so at Intercon, at one point, I actually was one of his supervisors. And my boss pulls me into her office and says, there's going to be a riff. We're going to lay off a bunch of people. And I need your help in figuring out who to keep. Well, of course, we'll keep Arias because he's our best guy. And I went, Arias is going to go back to school in 6 weeks. We're going to lose Arias anyway. And so we put him on the list of people to lay off. Now, everybody on the layoff list got sucked into our corporate parent, PSINet. So nobody went without a paycheck. But we all knew it was going to suck if you had to go over to PSINet. So Arias, I'm talking to him later in the day, and he's going like, what the hell happened? How did I get laid off? Why did they keep those people and they didn't keep me? What the hell happened? And I said, yeah, that was me. I put you on the list. So that was the joke. So, okay. So I'm checking here real quick to see if there's any. Yeah. So Wright says he's in Shalimar. So I think I looked that up once before. And I think you are actually very close. So we need to actually, right? And I need to actually talk. And thank you for whoever liked the shirt. Let me make sure that everybody can see it.
We checked. Oh, and
Andy has one just like it because I bought two, one in his size, one in mine.
Mr. Voigt, I also did go to the World War II Museum in New Orleans a few weeks ago, and that was fantastic. So great time.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'd really like to go there.
Yeah. Yes, you would.
Oh, so we got people who live in the Dayton area and stuff. Yeah, we should do some sort of meetup. So we should get Pat can use that I can fly anywhere superpower that he's got. Come and join us. So
may be able to.
But all right. So I tell you what, we should probably, it's 25 minutes after the hour. And I think I've said this before, but it's worth reiterating because sometimes when we get new people, they go like, well, you just sort of babbled for 20 minutes or whatever, and you didn't really get to it. And we try to stay actually more focused than it appears. Like, for instance, Pat and I talked a little bit about how we were going to do the intro. And I said, I really wanted to talk about Arius and stuff like that. But it's kind of intentional that we do it this way for two reasons. One is that we don't want it to just be this sterile, we're going to give you, it's good that we're giving you presentations and stuff like this, but we want it to be more interactive than that. And I really like the fact that people, put in comments about how their personal life goes, and that we're on YouTube, we're arranging a meetup and all that other stuff. I think that's really cool. The other thing about it is, quite frankly, if we do an hour-long show that's an hour of prepared material, then we got to come up with an hour of prepared material each week. But if we do an hour-long show that's, we sort of like, hey, how you doing? Tell us what's going on in your life. What things in your life, like, Pat in the simulator is, I think Pat and I both have interesting jobs, and we'd kind of like to share the wealth in that regard. But it also means that we don't have to do as much prepared material. So let us know if our balance is off, because I don't want to alienate anybody. But it is kind of intentional that we have, a little bit of a conversation beforehand, because we're really kind of viewing this as, this has gotten to be, a little community here, and we're trying to sort of promote that. So that's what's going on here with that. Anything you want to add on that, Pat?
No, I think that's good. Yeah, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully we can continue to keep doing this for a while. So it's been good, and thank you for coming back and waiting for us. Really appreciate that. So it's not lost on me that this didn't just disappear while we were busy.
And we had a conversation with Alec and Lissa a couple of days ago, like last week, I think. About just sort of like, where we wanted to go with things, etc. And, we're all gung-ho to do it. Alec said, we were saying like, Alec, why don't you come back on the show? And he basically said, well, you guys got it, and you're doing your own thing. He was going to come on tonight. I was kind of looking forward to him being on the show tonight, but he's dealing with puppies. So,
well, we were hoping to have a guest tonight, and Alec was going to be it, but he couldn't make it.
yeah, he couldn't make it. So I did say that I was going to talk about kill chains, which is, and I just realized that I didn't actually put anything in my talk where I really talk about Star Trek. I'll talk about Star Trek. No, I mean, I didn't put anything on the slides. I mean, I'm thinking about Star Trek examples, etc. But, and I'll sort of do that for a little bit of context.
We'll just wave this in the background every now and then.
Yes. And realistically, this is going to be one of those conversations. Like, there's a lot of the conversations that we do in this, especially the ones that I've got the stick for, that the first part, it ends up being a multi-part thing. And the first part of it is me sort of going like, yeah, let me talk about this cool Navy thing. And then later on, it's like, okay, now I've had some time to sort of go and think about it in a Star Trek context. And now we'll sort of bring the Star Trek stuff into it. And, this is one of those things that right off the top of my head, I don't have a whole lot of examples I can just go and grab from a Star Trek standpoint. Maybe, just maybe, Pat does off the top of his head, because Pat's current knowledge of Star Trek, his total knowledge of Star Trek, regardless of time, is probably greater than mine, but his current knowledge is unambiguously greater than mine. So that's kind of the way it is. All right, let me go ahead and start some slides.
So this is a pretty funny one. You mentioned red shirt. There was red shirts mentioned in here. I'll just see if I can hold this up, see if it, there we go. Don't know how well you can see that. There we go. Come on, man. I made us all wear blue shirts. We're safe.
I love the picture of Kirk with 3 red shirts, and he says, "Dig 3 graves up there. I'll tell you why later."
Yep.
My brother Delon is there. That must mean he has safely reached Missouri. Because when I talked with him earlier, he was driving to Missouri. There was one other thing I was going to say as sort of an intro. Normally, my 4th of July routine is at some point on the 4th of July, I watch the musical 1776. I adopted this as a tradition, but I'm not going to be able to do it. So this year, I settled for watching the cemetery scenes in the death scene from Saving Private Ryan. So I figured that was sort of the appropriate spirit for the 4th of July. So, but in any event, let me share my screen. And now Lissa will push the magic button, because that's what she does. She pushes the magic button. Thank you, Lissa. Okay, so let me pull this down. So I'm moving windows around so I can see what I need to see. All right. Okay, so this is what we got. Let's see if this works. All right, so the topic is going to be kill chains, including, as I promised or threatened, depending upon how you look at it, counter kidney stone operations using the ASW kill chain as a model. So a kill chain is conceptually quite simple. It's just a sequence of steps necessary to hit a target. And so you got to detect the target. You got to do some other stuff on the target. I mean, you basically have to figure out exactly where the target is, and so that you can put a weapon on, right? So a kill chain, if you're using a handgun, it's pretty simple. You're in the same room with the person. They're very close. That's pretty simple. It's also useful at the end of the kill chain to do some battle damage assessment, i.e., did I actually kill it? And that is oftentimes implied. I like the ballistic missile defense kill chain because it's an explicit step, and in part that's because you're dealing with stuff that's far away, and sometimes it's actually kind of hard to tell if you hit it, or if you hit it enough. In the simplest form of a kill chain is find, fix, finish. And that means find the thing, fix its position, know exactly where it is, and finish it by killing it. Or you could expand that a little bit and call it detect, you know where it is, track. So why are you tracking it? Why don't you just skip right to kill? Well, in general, because it takes a while to sort of arrange all this stuff, right? You got to arm a weapon. You got to there's other stuff you got to do before you can get to the targeting piece. And also the next step is important, classify. You need to make sure that you're shooting something you want to shoot. So you detect it, you track it for a while, and by virtue of the fact that you're tracking it, you are figuring out if it's actually the thing, is it real? Am I detecting a false positive, or is it real? You classify it. Okay, it is real. I can tell that it's consistently something there, and I can tell that it's a thing that I want to kill, and then I target it. Kill chains are often formulated in a number of ways. A lot of it has to do with the sensor technology involved, like the ASW kill chain pretty nicely matches the technologies that you're using in the kill chain. And so from that standpoint, it's it's really kind of, you know, the exact details really fit into into what you're actually trying to accomplish in a situation like that. Actually, let me go back there for a second. You'll notice that there's a couple of different kill chains down there. Find, fix, track, target, engage, assess is the current general U.S. Air Force one. The ballistic missile one starts off with detect. I kind of like detect as opposed to find. But these really sort of kind of do the same thing. A lot of it is a conceptual difference. Like what should you be thinking about, right? Breaking it down into steps is useful in that regard. So let's take a look at the ASW kill chain. So your detection might occur through a long range, like SOSUS, which is a set of undersea sensors that are on the seafloor, or some national asset. For instance, assuming that the US government had satellites in orbit that can see things through various electromagnetic ways, they may give a report. Tracking is through either acoustic detections or radar hits, or, you know, it actually could be through visual. You could be looking at a periscope sticking out of the water, or even a submarine on the surface. Identification, if you don't have a visual, identification is usually done through analyzing what are called tonals. And the idea, those are narrow band sound signals. So broadband is just noise, right? It's a loud noise, it's, you know, a clank or something like that. You might be able to tell what that individual clank is. Like it might be something like, you know, opening a torpedo tube door or dropping a big wrench or something like that. But the tonals are generally caused by rotating machinery, and they show up as bright lines on a sonar display in a particular band. And if you know what tonals a submarine has, you can identify it, right? You can say, okay, it's got tonals at this, and this band, and therefore it's an umpty-frats. Or if it had something else, it would be this other thing. So anything that sound that goes in the water, you can sort of pick that out. One of the good things about it is if you're listening to the narrowband stuff, it's easy to pick that out of the background noise. So, you know, a rotating generator piece sounds a lot different than a whale fart. And it's very easy to pull that out of the background. Then localization, you might use magnetic anomaly detector to localize. And all these different sensors have different ranges. Like the SOSUS has a tremendously long range. I can't tell you how long it is. If I did, I'd have to kill you. But it has a very long range. Shipborne sonar generally has a lesser range than that. MAD is a perfect localization sensor and a perfect targeting sensor, because MAD is so short ranged that if you hit the if you got the target on MAD, you know that you're within weapons range and you can drop a weapon on it. And then, you know, then you've dropped a weapon. That's easy, right? Well, okay, you got to drop the weapon in the right place if you don't have a MAD hit, because maybe your MAD isn't working or you don't have MAD on that platform. It becomes harder to drop the weapon in the right place. And if he's got decoys, he might decoy it off. And then it's still got to detonate. And, you know, depending upon the submarine, some submarines have thicker hulls than other submarines. So when you add all that stuff up, it's by no means guaranteed that you're going to be able to kill it with just one shot. Especially since sometimes the quality of the data in some of these steps isn't as high as you might want. You might think you've got a target, but, you know, I'm not sure I got a target, but I don't like submarines, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop a weapon anyway. That can sometimes happen. So, by the way, the guy who's playing the captain of the aircraft carrier down here, anybody recognize that actor from other things he's done? Like Pat, did you ever see him in a Star Trek episode?
I don't recall. I guess I've never looked at his name.
He played Professor Moriarty on the holodeck.
You're absolutely right.
He also played the obnoxious butler in The Nanny.
Oh, okay. All right. Huh.
So, because I at one point I realized that he looked really familiar, and I couldn't figure out. I mean, I remembered, okay, yeah, that's the captain from Hunt for Red October, but I couldn't remember like what else, you know. But he looked really familiar, so I looked him up on Wikipedia or something. So
that's awesome. All right, yeah, and he was in a few. He came back a couple times.
Yeah, he was in a couple of episodes. So somebody said Glenn Scott. He's actually not Scott Glenn. Scott Glenn played the captain of the USS Dallas. So he was the submarine skipper there. But I forget what his name is. Daniels something or something Daniels, one of the two. I can't remember. So on the right-hand side here, you've got a little graphic that shows all these different sensors in place with a P3 Orion. So it has a MAD that can detect MAD detects the magnetic anomaly that the MAD is detecting is that when a Ferris-hulled submarine is moving through the Earth's magnetic field, it distorts the magnetic field, and you can detect that distortion. You can have active sonar in the form of a buoy you drop in water that has a sound source, and then there's receivers. You can just have receivers. You know, an active sonar gives you, in general, not always the case, but in general, an active sonar gives you the range, and a passive sonar only gives you bearings. So you want to have more than one. Radar can detect periscopes. Radar is actually a highly effective detection mechanism because submarines have a tendency to put up their periscopes. They need to do that to talk to other units. And a lot of countries have a doctrine that says that you do periscope attacks. So you use your periscope as your sensor mechanism to confirm the target's ID and to do the final bit on the attack. Not everybody does it that way, but as a general rule, it's especially true if you're operating in a diesel electric submarine. It's a general rule that you're doing periscope attacks, and as a result, you're sticking something above the water. You're being what they call in the business indiscreet. And so the indiscretion rate of submarines is one of the things that you pay attention to. The better you are, the less indiscreet you are. You can do things like only put the periscope up very quickly and then bring it back down. But every time you do that, there's a possibility a radar can see you. So let's talk about a practical, relevant, real-world example from the movie Independence Day. So, you know what?
It's good that you are bringing real-world things into it. That's good.
Oh, and you know what? I screwed this up.
Uh-oh.
It's supposed to be 2 slides. Let me fix it real quick. Yeah, see, oh, did I delete? I accidentally deleted the other slide. All right. Well, so you guys already got to see the, okay, I need to reshare.
Oh, speaking of aliens.
Hold on a second, I can't see it. I'm doing the share thing. Show it again, please. Oh yeah, Tic Tac. Okay, so usually when I do this as 2 slides. I don't have the answer at the bottom, and I don't have the big X there. So your weapons are going to have a hard time with these. Like you're Will Smith, you're out there, you've got your, early on they did something about how radar doesn't work because of the force field. But you're also going to have a problem with air-to-air missiles, infrared air-to-air missiles on this. And it does not matter if these things are hot or not. Right? An air-to-air missile homes on the hot exhaust of an aircraft engine. Even if these things are hot, an air-to-air missile, a modern air-to-air missile is still going to have a problem with them. And that's because your weapon is going to think it's a decoy and it's going to break that kill chain. You have to execute all these steps to get from from the very beginning to I'm going to kill this thing, and it's going to prevent you from doing the targeting step of this. It's not going to lock on. And the reason for that is because we make weapons smarter by making them dumber. Or more accurately, we make them smarter by making them, or more lethal by making them more limited in terms, giving them better ability to
they've got stronger filters.
Yeah, they've got stronger filters. So in this particular case, you know, in the history of infrared air-to-air missiles went like this. We come up with an infrared air-to-air missile, and you have to be pointing at the back of the aircraft, so you have to be behind it, but in general, and you have to make sure that you don't accidentally point it at the sun. And early on, they would fly up towards the sun to get it to decoy off into the sun. But in general, you know, it worked pretty well. Well, okay, so somebody's going to shoot an air-to-air missile at me that's got an infrared sensor. How do I beat that? Well, it's looking for something hot. Let me give it something hot. So I can try to fly towards the sun. That's useful. It might, you know, it'll see the sun and it'll go, well, you know, that thing was hot, but that thing's really hot. And it'll fly at the sun. Or you can dump a flare out the side. And so now you've got this flare and it's really hot. And I'm going to go chase the flare. The missile's going to go chase the flare. So the missile guys go, okay, we don't want them chasing these flares. Let's look for a specific wavelength, right? So let's not just look for hot. Let's look for a wavelength that is consistent with a jet engine. Okay, now the missile's gotten better. The flare guy says, okay, now I need to design a flare that's at a specific wavelength because that's what it's looking for, so I'll be at the same wavelength. Then the missile designers go, okay, let's look at a couple of different wavelengths that are consistent with aircraft exhaust because not every part of the jet engine is the same temperatures. Parts of that exhaust are hotter than other parts. And so we're looking for a couple of different wavelengths. And it goes back and forth until eventually you get to something that's really, really good at discriminating between a jet engine and an alien saucer that's invading the Earth. And it's going to look at that alien saucer and say, you can't fool me. That's not a jet engine. So that doesn't work. Incidentally, Independence Day, I love Independence Day despite the fact it's wrong in every way, shape, or form.
Still fun.
It's still a fun movie. It's got every single trope in it. It's still fun. I think one of the big problems, though, is that they shoot air-to-air weapons at those city-sized spaceships. So they're shooting something that's designed to take down a fighter at something that's literally miles across. Even without those force fields, every single air-to-air weapon they fired would be irrelevant. Really, the only thing that they could do of relevance would be nuclear weapons or literally flying B-52s over the top and just carpet bombing them, right? They should have just, it's the size of a city. Treat it like it's a city and carpet bomb it.
Yeah, the only thing is, wow, wait a minute. No, it had the bigger ship. So
yeah,
those ships themselves weren't designed to travel in the interstellar medium and get hit with little flakes of dust at high speeds and stuff like that. But yeah, you're an air-to-air missile. You're talking just a few pounds of explosives, and in some cases you have what's expanding rods. So you know the explosion just creates this sort of spherical thing that damages the airplane. And an airplane is a very thin-skinned aluminum, highly fragile piece of machinery. You know, so yeah, it was amusing to see AMRAAMs and Sidewinders being fired at a city. We wouldn't even shoot Sidewinders at a city. It wouldn't do anything.
Yeah,
even if that was a human structure.
The comment's been made that, you know, it might actually be difficult if you only had one weapon. It might be difficult to bring down an airliner with a weapon like that because it's going to home on the jet engine.
So there was an example, I want to say it was DHL in Afghanistan,
Okay.
Cargo aircraft, 4-engine cargo aircraft. And I don't remember all the details, but someone fired a shoulder launched surface to air missile at it and, hit the engine, but the plane survived. These mere civilian pilots got the plane back down. So,
which doesn't surprise me. I mean, on a big plane like that, especially in a 4-engine airplane, the engine hangs down low. It's a small warhead,
and it's designed to contain an explosion.
Yeah. So if it actually goes up the tailpipe, it actually probably does less damage to the aircraft writ large if it actually enters the engine than if it just got close to the wing and detonated.
You're right. You've got me rethinking what I would do in my airliner if someone shot a shoulder launch SAM at me, and I knew about it.
Yeah, but you fly that small stuff. You're probably going down. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, probably.
So, but I
do have the roll rate of an F-16, just not the sustained turn performance.
It would be hard to have the sustained turn performance of an F-16. They're really pretty impressive. One of the things so when I was at the War College, I had students that were 15, 16, and 18 pilots, and I knew it's a couple of 14 pilots, although they were all out of the fleet by the time that I had students. And it was interesting because one of the things that everybody agreed with is that once you get to the merge, you don't want to be fighting an F-16. And the merge is the part where they sort of do this, because the F-16 guys, that's what they live for. That's what they've practiced. That's what they're really good at. And even something like an F-15, has to respect an F-16 in that situation. Now, beyond visual range, put your money on the F-15. But when you get up close, the F-16 is really, really good. The other thing is, I asked all those guys, who would you be willing to go out and fly against? Just
F-14s.
Just for fun. Who would you be willing to do that and who wouldn't? And they consistently said, I'm willing to go train against 15s, 16s, and 18s. It's not worth my gas to train against 14s.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were an interceptor meant to shoot down backfires.
Yeah, they said the issue was the radar.
Yeah.
That you could notch the radar. And that's when you fly for the rest of the world, that's when you fly at an angle such that you don't have a rate of change, and you sort of, because there's no Doppler, you kind of fall off the radar scope. And so if you know how to do it, and this is the sort of things that the pros spend a lot of time learning how to do. If you know how to do it, you can basically, you end up behind the F-14, and the first that they know that you're there is when you're making radio calls saying that you've launched a missile. So, but in any event, next slide. So I talked about this once before, a long, long time ago. I'm going to talk about it a little bit again, because I made the decision at one point, Pat and I kind of made the decision that we could talk about stuff more than once, because, I don't know if you saw it the last time and it's relevant this time. So let's go ahead and talk about it again. This is from the design notes for the game Star Cruiser, which was the board game that went along with the 2300 role-playing game. And this game was designed by Frank Chadwick. Now, Frank came up in a couple of episodes recently where I talked about his books that he's written, because he writes novels now. He does some game design stuff, but he does a lot of novels. And he wrote Chain of Command and Ship of Destiny, both of which are excellent, excellent novels. They're very naval-oriented. He also has two other novels in that same universe, the Sasha Naradno series. And I've read the first of those. I'm listening to the audiobook on the second. And tomorrow as I drive to Iowa, I'm probably going to polish off that book, I think. They're set in the same universe. They have the same alien races. It's sort of the same general political situation. There's some interesting stuff in there. Great stuff. So this little essay, he basically says that tactical combat is really about targeting, right? It's about the targeting part of the kill chain. And that there's two ways that you can improve your targeting. One is to increase the precision of fire, and the other is by increasing the volume of fire. If you think about that, that makes sense. I can make each bullet perform better by making it more precise. And I can make it precise by knowing where the enemy is, so I can shoot the bullet at him specifically, by increasing the performance of the weapon. So like if it has a higher velocity and it's spinning faster, it'll be more stable, and as a result, it'll have a flatter trajectory, and that might make it easier to hit. Or by increasing weapon control, I can aim it more precisely. So all of those things help increase precision of fire. Or I can increase the volume of fire just by increasing the number of guns I've got, or by making the guns fire faster. I mean, that's what made the machine gun so deadly. It wasn't that, the caliber of the weapon, because we had lots of weapons of that caliber. It's the fact that they just, were like a buzzsaw. They put out a lot of bullets, and it was a way of increasing the volume of fire. World War I was really about increasing the volume of fire across the board. If you're on the defense, you can deal with this by decreasing the precision of the fire, or you can do that by jamming, smoke, maybe shooting back at them and making them duck. There's all sorts of things you can do to decrease the precision of the fire, or you can make the fire less effective. So in effect, you're making the volume of effective fire go down, and you can do that by armoring. So if your tank has sufficient armor that most of the rounds bounce off, it's the same thing as decreasing the effective volume of fire. And one of the things that I find really funny about this particular useful observation is that I stumbled across this presentation that I've got the citation down below by Robert Work. This was before when he was Undersecretary of the Navy, and then he was later the Deputy Secretary of Defense. And this presentation from 11 years ago basically it's all about this, and it's worth going through and tracking it down. It's available on the web. Okay, so let's talk about counter kidney stone operations, because I said I was going to, and I'm going to. So let's look at the ASW kill chain again. So you got detect, track, identify, localize, and attack, and then kill. So here's my example of counter kidney stone ops. So first of all, there was some initial queuing, and I haven't really talked about queuing. Queuing is a step that occurs. You could say it's the first step in it, or you could. I think it's actually better to think of it as the kill chain is really a tactical construct. Queuing is sort of a bigger picture than that, and queuing is, we got reason to think that there's something there. So we need you to put a sensor out there to sort of figure out where it might be. So queuing might be that you get a radio intercept that, there's a piece of intel saying they're going to be in this area, or you get a radio intercept or something like that. So in this particular case, the queuing was in the form of a pain in my left kidney that it started off being not too bad, and then like at one point became an ice pick in my left kidney, and then went away, largely went away. So I talked to my doctor and I say, we got to do something about this. And the first thing they did is they actually had me get an x-ray. My doctor said, all right, you can just go downstairs and get an x-ray. By the time you get down there, the order will be in. And x-ray didn't detect anything. We'll come back to the reason why later, but that actually turns out to be important when we get to the attack kill phase. So I have a typo there for track. Apparently I didn't finish that. So track was just really kind of, we repeatedly went in every now and then and put a sensor on it and tried to figure out what happened. So a couple of different times we figured out where it was, but there wasn't really tracking per se. We had a pretty good idea that it was south of the kidney, north of the bladder once we looked at it in a CAT scan, and that's, I think, where he found it when the doctor went looking for it. Became pretty clear. Yep, that's a kidney stone. We actually localized it on CAT scan, figured out exactly where it was. They could tell me it was a 4 mm stone. Looked just like a kidney stone, had all the attributes. The next phase was to go in and take care of it. Now, this is the part where that bit where the X-ray didn't find it is kind of relevant. So not all kidney stones are made out of the same stuff. And some of those kidney stones are what are called radiolucent, which means
That's stealth.
Stealth. It's a stealth kidney stone. So stealth kidney stones don't show up on X-ray.
Well, I'm sorry. This is Star Trek. Cloaked.
Cloaked. Yes. Okay, that works. It's a cloaked kidney kidney stone. And I just realized I said I was going to talk about Star Trek as I was going through this, and I didn't. Well, we should talk about some Star Trek at the very end before we leave.
We just did.
That's true. We should talk about it a little bit more. But in any event, so it turns out that if your kidney stone is made out of uric acid, it won't show up in X-rays. And so uric acid is also the thing that causes gout. I have gout. Uric acid is also a side effect of a high protein diet. I'm a bariatric patient. I have a high protein diet. So not at all surprising, not even remotely surprising that I have a uric acid kidney stone. And that's a problem because the sensor that they have in the operating room is X-rays. Like right above the operating table, there is an X-ray machine. If you know what you're looking at, it's right there. So they can always just take an X-ray in the middle of the surgery if they need to take an X-ray. They don't have a CAT scan in the room. It's in another room. And even if it was in the operating room, if you're in the big tube, the doctor can't do anything because you're busy being in this big tube, right? And so he can't like scan and do stuff at the same time. Ultrasound is a handheld thing, so it's less precise, and because of the frequencies involved. Like when I went to the to get the ultrasound, they were able to say, yeah, we think there's something there. You should do a CAT scan. So really all the ultrasound did was justify doing a CAT scan. We think there's something there. Look at it with a better sensor, which is really kind of what happens in kill chains. And so the doctor ended up actually going in and doing visual targeting. He couldn't use X-ray. He used the scope. He did visual targeting, and he fired at the kidney stone with a laser and broke it into several pieces that then were not being 4 millimeters in size, actually were easier to pass. So it really is sort of kind of the same thing, right? It's a series of steps that you kind of have to march through. It's not a perfect fit, but it really sort of works that way. So let's talk a little bit about Star Trek and kill chains, because how is this relevant to Star Trek, right? Have you ever seen them go through a kill chain in an episode of Next Gen or anything like that? You get pieces of it, right? You get pieces of it. You get an initial detection. You get, okay, we're detecting a cloaked ship, or we're detecting a ship. Oh yeah, it's a Klingon ship. It's a Klingon bird of prey. Okay, that's good to know. And then they start talking about, attacking it. So it's probably not the ASW kill chain. That's the one you want to think about in Star Trek terms. It's probably closer to find, fix, finish, or one of the other ones. Let me go back. I think that's the end. Yeah, so let me go back. So find, fix, track, target, engage, assess. Detect, track, classify, target is probably pretty good, right? You gotta track it in order to put a weapon on it. You got to figure out that you're shooting what you want to shoot. Then you target it. And of course, in the era of Next Gen, when they mean target, they don't mean I'm going to shoot the ship. What they mean is I'm going to shoot the porthole in the captain's cabin, the one on the left, because it's amazing the number of called shots that they do in Next Gen for very, very precise targeting. So a lot of this stuff is handled by computer, but they do sort of go through this process. It's a lot easier in next gen. They can run that process a lot faster. They've got one set of sensors, or at least it's such an integrated set of sensors that you never have to have somebody say, okay, well, what does sonar say, or what does this say, or ask them to do a mad run or anything like that. But they clearly go through a similar process to that because they really kind of have to. Pat, you look like you're going to say something. Pat, you muted yourself.
I did mute myself, didn't I? Let's see here. So yeah, it generally seems pretty similar. The queuing thing, I think that probably happens with really long range sensors. The Galaxy class, they talked about, hey, they can search I think like a 20 by 20 light year sector in one full day. When they were looking for the Phoenix, trying to track down the Phoenix in Cardassian territory, they actually had to go through the process of finding it. So I suppose on that kind of really large scale where they're light years apart, that might be similar to the ASW portion of it. But and then from there, once they know where it is, obviously they can go find it, and then they got to get into weapons range, which is relatively short when compared to light years, to go find it. And so let's see here. So yeah, they. So yes, there would be a form of queuing there. In Deep Space Nine, there was a battle, or they talked about the Dominion having this the Argolis. This big sensor array in the Argolis cluster, as I recall.
Okay.
Which was basically identifying and giving them the Dominion queuing. And so basically anytime the Federation went somewhere, the Dominion was there waiting for them. So they had superior queuing. So I think if you were talking that long range sensors and scanning type stuff would probably be the queuing. And then shorter range sensors, you'd be talking about fix and track would be your weapons tracking and that sort of thing. And then from there, once you're essentially in a battle, close enough to be in a battle in weapons range, then it's pretty hard to hide a ship at that point, unless they're in a nebula or something like that.
There's a talk I do at science fiction conventions called What the U.S. Navy Taught Me About Starfleet. And one of the things I talk about is that how Starfleet has both a hard problem and an easy problem. And the easy problem is all their equipment is just fantastic. They got these sensors that can see light years away and never break.
Yep.
Right? Every single member of Starfleet is an A-list performer. Even the guys that are screw-ups, relatively speaking, would be considered A-list performers in any real-world military.
Yeah, well, it's still a relatively small percentage of people, I imagine, in Starfleet compared to the billions and billions of people they have to draw from. One comment here that says, I think they did track the Phoenix by its IFF transponder. I don't believe they did, actually. They were able to identify the Cardassian ships from across the border. And whoever the gull that was, the Cardassian captain was surprised that Picard said, I think, yes, we were able to make that determination or something like that. Basically, able to identify him. I don't remember precisely how they found the Phoenix. I suspect if he was trying to be hidden, he might have turned it off in some way. But let's see here. And then, and Mr. Burton, congratulations to your son going into the Navy.
So,
all right. And so we are also, I believe, very close to the end of our time. Or
we're actually a little over. So just responding to Stephen real quick.
All right, cool.
So I think we're done.
All right, everybody.
All right.
I'll see everybody in 2 weeks for myself. So look forward to being back soon. And I will talk to you later. Let's see. They're supposed to be.
So, all right. Goodbye, everybody.
All right. Take care, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Good to see you. Or thanks for showing up again. Appreciate it.
Okay, Lissa, you can play the outro music now.
And goodbye, everybody.
Maybe are we gonna do another hour?
I don't think we're allowed to leave.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're not allowed to leave. What the hell? I wonder if her computer crashed again.